Welcome to Near Mid Condition. If you're new to the channel, I'm the Astonishing Melanie, and this is the Uncanny Omar. And together we're
I'm sorry, I didn't know we were doing that today. I would have prepared. I didn't know we were doing that.
So, thank you so much to Mr. Chip Zdarsky.
Yeah, I'm the subpar Chip Zdarsky. That's my
name. I hear you write comics.
Yes, tell us more about these comics.
Write comics, and you.
Great opening question, guys. Nailed it right out of the gate.
What we do here. No, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Both of us big fans of your work. Been following your work for a while. I remember getting an advanced copy of Life Story, and I thought, okay, there's no way that this does not get an oversized hardcover treatment, because people kept asking me, like, do you think it's going to be a hardcover? And that was one that I was like, yeah, I think it's that good of a story. It's going to win all kinds of awards. Speaking of awards, man, look at you. Sex Criminal right off the bat. Like, was that an Eisner for brand new series? You want to?
That was a night. Yeah. That's super weird, just because that was a series that Matt and I did just for each other for fun, that we thought was going to get canceled in 3 issues. Mm-hmm. And within like a day we knew, oh, this is going to change our lives. Like, this is weird. Like, and to cap it off with that Eisner win was pretty awesome. Yeah. And Matt's up for an Eisner this year for Best Writer. We're against each other, which is a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. And not a strain on our friendship at all. But I hope he wins, because it's also for Sex Criminals, right? So if he wins Best Writer, it's kind of like I'm winning Best Writer.
Kind of, yeah.
That's how I feel.
Who gets to keep the thing, though?
I will allow him. Actually, he owes me an award.
He does?
Yeah, because years ago, I won a Harvey Award, and I couldn't accept it, and Mark Waid accepted it. But then Mark Waid did this thing where he never gave it to me, and he sent it around the world. So, like, all these comic creators would have photos. Like, I think even before CV became editor-in-chief, there was a photo of like him in like Singapore or something with it, and Jason Aaron like laid it out on a pillow with some condoms. Like, it was just all over the place. It eventually made its way to Matt, and Matt started charging people money to touch it at like a comic convention he was at. So I just saw a bunch of photos of people just touching my award, and then Kelly Sue DeConnick, his wife, ended up shooting a pilot for NBC, and they used it in the pilot as like set decoration. So I guess somewhere in the background of a pilot nobody's seen is my Harvey Award, and that's the last they saw of it. So I think NBC actually has my award in like some storage. I always picture like the Raiders of the Lost Ark scene at the end. There's like a warehouse of props.
Yes.
And my Harvey Award somewhere in there.
That's a lot more fun, right, than it being on your shelf?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm fine with it. But also, technically, he owes me an award. So if he wins Best Writer, I would like the trophy.
Okay, we already got a good question from our buddy Gideon, who's 14, right? Chip, how do I convince my mom to let me get Sex Criminals?
Well, okay, look.
Dust jacket.
This is the kind of thing that gets me in trouble. I have no problem with children reading Sex Criminals. Mm-hmm. I would have more problem with them reading Daredevil than I would Sex Criminals, because Daredevil is violence-based and Sex Criminals is sexy-based. And I think it's pretty educational, too. I think we treat the subject matter with the respect it deserves. And the characters are interesting, and you can learn from them. I've definitely had weird instances in the past where, because the book's been out for like 10 years, I'll go to a convention, it'll be like this big burly guy coming up and being like, oh yeah, I've been reading Sex Criminals since I was 15. I'm like, oh, that's weird. Like, parents confiscated his copy of Sex Criminals. Teachers confiscated them. Like, yeah, there've been a lot of fans that are in high school that technically should not own it, but however did. And I think most of them turned out okay. So, I mean, yeah, to convince the mom, just let her read it. Just buy it for her as a present. She'll learn about sex, and that'll be great. And when she's done, she'll pass it to you.
She'll thank you for introducing you into her life. That's really...
Exactly. Exactly.
Chip, you're a creator that I've wanted to talk to for a long time because you have a really good sense of humor, like your newsletter, and you come across like a really funny guy. And
but
no buts. I was going to say
and there you go.
I just couldn't wait to have you here, man. It's great. I happen to find myself funny, so having somebody else that's funny, it's always a challenge, you know. Like,
are you calling him out?
No,
like,
not at all. I'm just gonna be like, oh man, I gotta
throw him down.
Funnier than I am, though. Then that, you know, I'm just it's a compliment. Okay, I embarrassed you before the show. Now I'm embarrassed.
No, that's very nice by calling me funny by also calling yourself funny. That's a very high compliment.
It's very what do I do? It's like a double-handed like compliment. I compliment myself, but also compliment you even more. But no, seriously, thanks for being here, man. So, how did this journey start for you? Like, how did Chip go? And decide one day, you know, I think I can do funny books. I think I'd like to do comic books for a little
funny
bit.
books.
You know, that moment still hasn't really happened. You know, I drew and wrote as a kid, and by the end of high school, I'm like, okay, well that was fun, kind of doing my own comics, and now I should go do a thing that makes money. And you know, I went to school for graphic design, kind of flunked out of that. I took illustration. And made a go of it as a freelance illustrator. But the illustration school I went to, this is actually kind of funny because they just tweeted today, my illustration school, about the people who graduated from the program who were up for Eisners. They're just like, they're really proud of us, right? You know, because Ramon and I are both up for it, and we both went to the same program. And I'm just like, well, I remember back in school them being like, no comics. Don't do comics. Like if they saw a picture of a superhero or a wizard or a warrior or a barbarian or whatever in our portfolio, they're like, no. Like it actually would say in the portfolio requirements, like no fantasy, no comic books. So they've definitely kind of turned around on that. But at the time, it was like, okay, you know, I don't do that. That's fine. So I ended up working for newspapers, and I worked for newspapers for like 10, 15 years and did kind of odd art jobs, and then I kind of started writing for them, and I would pitch little cartoons for them once in a while. And just on the side, I would do my own comics. I would do like little black and white comics at, you know, kind of small press things, self-publishing, and just kind of goof around online with some comics. Like I joined a webcomics collective in the early 2000s and was on all the message boards, and it was always just a secondary thing. Like I never saw it as a career because I had a career. My career was, I worked for a newspaper. I wrote columns for them, and I did drawings once in a while, and that was my life. And then, like I was friends with Matt Fraction, and at one point I was starting to get a little antsy and a little bored at the newspaper. And I just said to him, because he was just kind of not coming out of Marvel, but like he was definitely kind of on his way out.
Yeah.
I think he just done Fear Itself, which, you know, events takes it out of you. And he was starting in Humans, but that was kind of falling apart. And I don't think Hawkeye had even come out yet. But like being given Hawkeye at that time was Marvel's way of telling you you're done. You know, like because Matt had done Uncanny X-Men and Fantastic Four, and then the only book he had at Marvel was Hawkeye. And so I was talking to him. I know, that's the thing. Like, and so I was talking to him. He's just like, you know, I don't know what I want to do. I'm like, I don't know what I want to do either. Like, we should do a comic together. Mm-hmm. We're like, okay. And so we just did this dumb thing, thinking it was just going to be, you know, just him and I goofing off. And then simultaneously, like, Sex Criminals took off, which surprised us completely. And Hawkeye took off, which surprised Matt and Marvel completely. Like, I think that year Hawkeye was like their #1 selling trade. Like, that's bonkers. Like, if you remember Hawkeye before that book, that was not a title that sold, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, Sex Criminals just changed everything. Like, all of a sudden I was drawing a comic. One that I didn't write, but I was working on with one of my best friends, and I was just having a blast. I did that and my newspaper job for a year. So there's a full year where I was doing both of them kind of full time, and I was getting burnt out. And
this person would like to know what newspaper did you work for?
a National Post in Canada was the one that ended up being my employer. I freelanced for Globe and Mail and Toronto Star, the other kind of big papers here. But the National Post was the one that could just let me do whatever I want. Like I would cover like political stuff and arts and entertainment, interview celebrities, and do kind of satire stuff. I had an advice column for 5 years called Extremely Bad Advice, where I would just give the worst advice. And I would accompany it with like these drawings I would do in kind of that airplane manual style, like instructions on how to live your life poorly. So it was the kind of place where I got to do whatever I wanted, which was amazing. And also just kind of build my skill set, which everything from there translated to comics, which was great. But yeah, after doing Sex Criminals for a while, there's an editor at Marvel who bought one of my black and white comics back in the day called Monster Cops, which is like a kid's comic. And he's like, "Oh, so you can write too? Like, that's cool. Do you want to pitch on Howard the Duck?" I'm like, "Yeah, okay."
Now,
Like I did a little 2-pager for him for like an anthology called Original Sins, which is just like a joke thing. And then, someone remembers my finance videos. Yeah, I had a character called Todd Diamond at the paper who would give finance advice videos, which were also bad advice videos. And they were called Finance Sense. You can look them up. They're very embarrassing. But yeah, so I did a 2-page gag strip for Marvel, and then they asked me to pitch on Howard the Duck, and I got the gig. And I think, I turned the work in on time. There were very few spelling errors, and so they just kept giving me gigs.
Had you read Howard the Duck, where you found like Steve Gerber's run?
Yeah. I mean, when I was a kid, I had a weird uncle. Everyone has their kind of weird uncle.
I think that's me. Oh, that would be me. But
could be you, yeah. But my weird uncle Fred is like, kind of an ex-hippie. And he had like all the kind of the weird magazines, like the Robert Crumb stuff and like all the old Epic magazines and Vampirella stuff. And he had the black and white Howard the Duck magazines. And I remember reading those as a kid when we'd go over to their house. I think my parents saw me reading a book with a cartoon duck on it, thinking it was fine. Right. But like those magazines were actually pretty graphic in spots. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm looking at breasts and my parents don't even know it. It's amazing.
It's amazing.
Perfectly drawn Gene Colan breasts.
Yes.
So yeah, so I was a fan from that, but that wasn't really the Steve Gerber stuff. I didn't get into the Gerber stuff until later. And yeah, it was kind of that weird job where if Steve Gerber was still alive, I wouldn't take it. Like his voice is so synonymous with that character that it would feel weird to write it. But also, I don't believe in ghosts, so I don't believe he's haunting me for writing it. So it was easy enough to say yes, knowing he wasn't around.
I like that you threw that in there, though. Like for anybody that was ever going to question if you believe in ghosts. By him. You believe in ghosts. That's actually what my next question was going to be.
Okay, good.
Off the question list.
What supernatural things do you believe in?
No, wait, let's ask. Do you believe in any supernatural things?
Why would you ask that?
It's literally the biggest fight I have with my wife.
Oh,
she believes in ghosts.
She does.
She does, yeah. I mean, I've softened on it over the years. Like, I used to just kind of argue with her about it, and now I'm just like, yeah, whatever, man. Whatever works for you, man. Like, I just don't. Yeah, you kind of hit an age where you're just like, everyone believes in different things, and
see, that's ghosts, man. You had to.
Gerber's getting his revenge.
Summon.
Oh my goodness.
You had to summon the ghost, Chip. All right. While he fixes things, let's see how everybody's doing today.
Spirits,
of course,
he
might still be listening to us going, these guys are jerks talking over me. I'm trying to give him...
I was like, no.
I'll wait and see if he comes back to us here in a minute. But thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Yes, and please know that I am reading, all your questions. These are great questions. Just trying to fit it in when organically, right?
Yeah, and we will. Actually, baby, can you hand me the Sex Criminals? It's the pink and purple book by Descender on that shelf. I want to show everybody the genius of these books. For anybody that
Look at the back for mature readers. Duh.
All right, so this is really cool.
Convince your mom you're mature. Show her the back of this hardcover.
So, in case you want to read this out in public, Under the Dust Jacket is Down Boy by Matt Fraction and Chip Zdarsky. And this back picture of Matt Fraction and Chip Zdarsky is awesome. This is their kind of... It's great. Let me see.
Tyler said, baby, can you hand me the Sex Criminals? It's not something I expected to hear tonight. The pink one.
The pink one.
Not the purple one.
Well, the purple one also has pictures, too. But yeah, this one...
Thanks for joining us, guys.
Yeah, we'll wait for him to come back.
Maybe it's Howard. We do have a poltergeist. Today's your birthday. I forgot to mention today's my birthday.
Happy birthday, Matt.
Yeah,
Matt, I talked to you earlier. You didn't tell me it was your birthday.
Tapsologic really loves the silver coin.
It's great. Horror anthology.
Horror anthology titles are the best.
All right. We will have to get... I don't think I've read Silver Coin.
So, here, sweet. Do you
there
wanna...
he is.
Oh, good.
I don't know what happened.
I'll tell you what happened. You pissed Steve Gerber off.
Yes,
when you
were
like,
there you go. Yeah.
That's what happens,
gotta
man.
be it. That's gotta
you don't
be
mess
it.
with Supernatural. Or option 2 would have been, okay, Chip really hates Supernatural talk, and he just got pissed off. And he's like, I'm done with this interview. I can't deal with you guys talking about this silly stuff.
We'll never know. Ooh.
Well, thank you for. I was complimenting your fine work. Whose bright idea was Under the Dust Jacket of the hardcovers? Brilliant. So you're not embarrassed when you're out in public.
Or reading it on a plane.
Or reading it on a plane.
No, the people are going to see overnight.
Like almost everything in Sex Criminals, I don't remember whose idea it was. I think at first we were going to do it where the book was going to say Sex Criminals, and then the dust jacket was going to be like brown paper wrapping. So that would be something different. It would, like how you used to get porn in the mail, and it was like the secretive brown wrapping paper.
I don't know what you're talking about, Chip.
No, I know you. I know you guys are a brick and mortar couple. You like to go straight into the store.
Yeah, I get yelled at by the religious cult across the street at a church. Pervert! Every time I walk out with a brown bag.
Exactly. So we were originally going to do it as like the brown packaging, and then inside you'd see it was Sex Criminals. And then one of us had the idea to like make it a modesty cover. But it's my favorite part of the book because nobody ever knows about it. And so at conventions, when people are getting them signed, we always get to reveal it to them. They're like, "Oh, have you ever looked under this?" And then we would show them what they've been missing. Yeah.
Under this.
Who keeps their dust jacket when they're reading? What monsters do that? Oh,
I am anti-dust jacket. Like I throw them out on anything when I get it.
Throw them away.
Throw them away.
Okay, that's another sin.
Well, I mean, like
dust jacket, man.
even the word dust jacket, like who's worried about getting dust on their books?
People that are allergic.
I like saying slipcover, but is that correct?
No.
Oh.
No, that's you're getting back to the sex talk.
Okay, so
come on.
Thank you, David, for the
look at him
chat.
Censoring himself.
Wow, that's nice.
Star ink genius. Omar and Melanie, you're awesome too. Oh, thanks.
You're genius. We're just awesome. I'll take that. I used to get the awesome award. Like you'll go far in life if you get the awesome award in school, but you're gonna make $1 billion if you get the genius.
You did get Mr. Friendly.
I did get Mr. Friendly in school, but that's another story. That's a subject.
That's why I got all the comic bucks.
You get recognition, man. Power. It's like Scarface, right? Like power, money.
Yeah, it's the best kind of celebrity, as my wife keeps pointing out to me. Like I only get recognized like one day every few months at a convention. Like as soon as I get within 2 blocks of a convention center, then people start to recognize me.
Yeah.
And then any other day, I'm free to live my life. It's nice.
I will say that, oh my goodness, what's his name? You recognize the back of his head.
Don Rosa.
Don Rosa. He recognized the back of Don Rosa's head.
I would recognize you from about a mile away.
Oh, yeah. We were in a restaurant, so. What about Philip's question? Hi, Chip. What art forms, novels, films, etc. do you indulge in most outside comics, either for inspiration to bring back to your comic work or just for your own entertainment or joy?
Who do you rip off, Chip?
Basically, who do I rip off? Yeah. Kind of everything. I went on a real tear last year of novels.
What genre? Anything?
I tend to just avoid genre and just go for like usually sad couples in the middle of a breakup stories. I don't know, just like
Nicholas
whatever. Yeah, sure. Once in a while.
Nicholas Sparks.
I remember that face.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm like one of those guys who just like my favorite author when I was younger was like Mordecai Richler, who like 90% of his novels were just about like Jewish guys in Montreal just trying to get by. Like that's it. That's the genre. Like just people trying to get by.
Down to earth, real talk.
Yeah, once in a while I'll try some sci-fi stuff. Like my wife is really into N.K. Jemisin's books, so I read the first one of the Hollow Earth series, which was like a big stretch for me. Like I have this weird thing where like I don't like reading genre stuff, and yet I'm a comic book guy. Like that never, it doesn't make any sense. I'm just like, ugh, fantasy, ugh, sci-fi, and then I'm totally okay with like Galactus. Like it makes zero sense.
Science is a lot different though. Like it's real. Like that could happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Hollow Earth? No way, man.
Yeah, that sounded interesting to me.
The title.
Yeah, like
Yeah, like
okay.
why is the Earth hollow? Come on.
Never mind.
there you go. Recently it's been memoirs. I'm in the middle of reading Daniel Henderson's The Ugly Cry. And she's an old friend from message boards back in the day. Patricia Lockwood, she's like a poet who wrote her first like semi-memoir, I guess. No One Is Talking About This, it's called, and that was really good. Yeah, I'm trying to think what else.
Do you watch movies? Like what kind of movies do you like to watch?
Just kind of everything everyone else watches. I don't know. I feel like kind of the most boring person alive, really.
Well, Dean's asking, did you watch the Netflix Daredevil show?
Mm-hmm.
Because your drawing and writing style is really similar to that show in terms of tone. Just curious whether it was intentional or not.
It wasn't intentional, but the funny thing with that show is, so I got the Daredevil gig after season 2 came out. And the weird thing is, like, people would tell me, like, when ours was coming out, how much it reminded them of season 3 of Daredevil. I'm like, but I didn't even see it. Like at the time, like it's just funny how these things just kind of line up. Like after watching 2 seasons of Daredevil, like I started to write as if it was season 3 of Daredevil or something. I really liked the show. And at some point, I remember pitching Daredevil in the room at Marvel. And then Joe Quesada introduced me to the Daredevil showrunner who happened to be there.
Oh, cool.
And this is before they found out they weren't coming back. And he was really nice. And I kind of had this weird feeling like, oh, so many people are kind of looking at the book right now because of the Daredevil TV show. Like it kept having to get kind of okayed by the higher ups at Marvel and Disney. Like I didn't really get many notes, but like the waiting process after writing issue 1 was lengthier than normal. And then the announcement came that Netflix had canceled the show, and my life got a lot easier. It was like this weird thing where all of a sudden nobody's paying attention to the book in terms of the higher ups anymore because they don't have to worry as much about the show. So I kind of felt like a bit of a weight was lifted off me, and I could just write what I wanted to write.
No, that makes
like nobody was dictating what I should write or not write, but there's definitely more eyes on the properties that have the TV film stuff going on.
Yeah,
I know that Lionheart just paid money, and I love him. But go to the next comment.
Don't say that's a Lionheart.
Come on, it's Lionheart. Come on, Omar.
Spend $5 on yourself doing errands. Buy that Snickers bar
for $5
at the checkout. I don't know.
How much is a banana? $5. Chip, you're amazing. Seeing this from Mexico. I said click on this.
Really? You said Mexico?
Look, Mexico. Okay.
Mexico.
I'm sorry. But he's got that's my middle name. I've never seen that as.
Wow, you're gonna interrupt the Chip Zdarsky.
Yeah, Chip, sorry.
Because your middle name is Jair.
I've never. Dude, how many times have you seen that name?
No, I have not.
I'm excited for you.
Thank you, Chip. I appreciate that.
Yours has.
Nope. That's exactly how it's spelled.
It doesn't have it.
Muchas gracias, hermano.
Okay. Well, now I know how to spell your middle name. All right.
So, Daredevil. Man, it feels like you're okay. I know I'm not the only one, but when reading your Marvel 2-in-1, I was like, this guy's gonna write Fantastic Four. Obviously, he's setting it up. Johnny and Ben, the Fantastic Four are back. It's gonna be phenomenal. And then we get the announcement that Dan Slott, and nothing against Dan Slott. I like Dan Slott, but I was really hoping that the announcement,
Omar.
Chip Zdarsky, FF, yes sir.
No offense, but you're clearly not in sales and marketing if that's what you thought.
Oh,
because nobody like the guy who's writing Marvel 2-in-1 launching a Fantastic Four series after Marvel 2-in-1 makes no sense from a marketing perspective. Because people already see Marvel 2-in-1 is always going to be a low selling title, right? Like it's just the nature of it.
The new ones. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Like Perez on artwork, Wolfman writing that stuff.
Yeah.
That's true.
Oh, look, we had Jim Chung and Valerio on Marvel 2-in-1, and it was a lot of fun. Like I loved writing that book, but it doesn't make any marketing sense to then be like, what a big splash! Like Fantastic Four is coming back because he's writing it. The guy who's basically been writing Fantastic Four. Like there's no surprise or interest there. Like moving Dan from a 10-year run on Amazing Spider-Man to Fantastic Four made all the sense in the world. Like even as a fan, I'm just like, oh yeah, no, I want to see that. And like I found out about that. It's actually pretty cool because like, as most people know, Fantastic Four wasn't being printed.
Right.
And the reason for that was the Fox stuff for the most part. So I was like one of the first people to find out it was coming back. Like I was at a Marvel retreat and I got taken to a side room with the editor Tom Brevoort and then his assistant.
Yeah, side room.
His assistant Alana, and they were like, only like 5 people know this. Fantastic Four coming back. Dan's writing it. We want to coordinate with you on Marvel 2-in-1 to make sure like this works well. I'm like, oh yeah, great. So we had a secret meeting that wasn't very secret because it was like a windowed office where everyone walking by can see us all in there, and they kind of knew what was going on. but Dan walked me through what his original story stuff was, and I talked about how I can help make that transition. And Marvel was good. Like they were like, you can keep doing Marvel 2-in-1, like when Fantastic Four comes back. But I was like, well, I don't think people want that. Like I don't think that makes sense from a marketing perspective either. I don't think you need to flood the market and have 2 FF books out. And so I said, this will work out well. I can leave 2-in-1 at issue 12, and Fantastic Four will be out for a couple months. But then, I think the next retreat that I went to at Marvel, the editor was like, "We want more Fantastic Four stuff from you. Do you want to do a quarterly?" And I'm like, "Well, not really. Like, I don't want to really be the secondary title again because you can't really do big things."
Oh, because you had done Peter Parker or Spectacular.
Yeah. I was in it would be the same position I was in before, where I was doing Spectacular Spider-Man while Dan was doing Amazing, where you can't really do much to change the character or the mythology or anything because the main title is taking care of that, and that's fine. You just tell the stories you can tell. But I didn't really want to be in that boat again on FF, and I didn't think the market could really support 2 FF titles. So I told Tom, I'm like, no, I don't really want to do it. That's okay. And he's like, well, just think about it. Think about what you want to do. I'm like, oh, whatever. And sure enough, like I went back to my hotel room. I'm like, oh, Fantastic Four X-Men. Because I had just
happened.
Yeah, because I was in the room that weekend or that week when Hickman presented his X-Men stuff for the first time, and like the room lost its mind.
Everywhere important that weekend.
Well, yeah, that's kind of the fun part about this gig, like, is the fact that like you're there for the beginning of all these ideas when you're at these summits or the retreats, and so Hickman told the room what he was doing, and I got to read the first few scripts, and there was a scene in there with Reed and Sue and Cyclops where they kind of talk about Franklin. I was like, oh, there's something there, because I love the old FF X-Men mini, Claremont and Bogdanov. And so so that's when I pitched FFX, and that was complicated just because it was an FF book because it was in Tom's office, but it was clearly a lot of X-Men stuff, which meant it was also an X book. So I kind of had like a lot of notes kind of flying from Dan and John and Tom the editor, and Jordan, the ex-editor. So that was like one of the trickiest projects to pull off, for sure.
Man, I like that mini series. I'm happy to hear that you were a fan of that FF by Claremont and I'm sorry. How did
Bogdanov? John Bogdanov?
Yeah, his art was so awesome. The Secret Diary of Mr. Fantastic. I always like that story. So, man, Mr. Fantastic is kind of a dick. Like, if you plan on it, right?
Yeah.
It's great.
That was awesome because it was Claremont writing the FF for the first time, really. Mm-hmm. And Bogdanov drew kids so well. Like, Franklin's just adorable in that.
Oh, yeah.
Feels
Big
real.
fan of Power Pack, man. Like, his Power Pack with all the kids is great.
Yeah, because I think he based Franklin off his own son. Because like at some point they ran like a photo of his son dressed as Franklin, and it's like basically Franklin. It was really cute.
That's cool. Yeah, I was a big fan of his stuff. All right, so yeah, you're a big fan of comics, so you were a big fan of Claremont, right? But I have to ask then, you're Daredevil. Mm-hmm. Daredevil's a character that's had stellar runs, right? It's had, for a character at Marvel, I'm looking just at the Omnis. Like, Omnis, usually they collect, like, the best runs. And lately they've been doing a lot of things in chronological order, which has been wonderful for completists. But for Daredevil, man, it seems like, Miller, Bendis, Brubaker, Wade, Charles Soule, Diggle, and Ascenti. Now we got Zdarsky. So out of everybody's run, who was your favorite? What was your favorite run on Daredevil?
So that goes with this question.
You know what? It's the one that most people don't go to right away, but it's Nocenti. It's Nocenti and John Romita Jr.
Yeah,
and Al Williamson on inks. It's just they're the wildest swings in that book. Like I love like the caveat being Born Again is my favorite story of all time.
Oh, hell
like,
yeah.
I think that's it. Like in terms, especially for Marvel stories, like that is a tight, amazing, well told comic.
More than Hollow Earth? It's better than Hollow Earth?
He's only read book 1 of Hollow Earth.
I've only read book 1, so I don't know. It's gonna be a movie. I'm gonna go watch the movie. And the Brubaker Bendis stuff obviously is a huge influence. But the Nocenti stuff is just wild. It's so wild, and those characters just feel so alive and real. And she just tackles so many great big concepts, and again, just takes those massive swings with the character. Like one of my favorite comics, like single issue comics of all time, and I go on about it, is issue 261, which is it's the Human Torch. Trying to fill in for Daredevil because Daredevil's missing. So Daredevil's not in the issue at all, and it's one of the best Daredevil issues you'll ever read. Like, it just sums up the character so well without him actually being there, and also is like the freshest take on Johnny Storm that's ever been written. Like, she's amazing. Nocenti's an amazing storyteller, and John Romita Jr. is at the top of his game in that run as well. And if you're a fan of Al Williamson, like the inking on it, like I could go on about the inking on that run. Like that's the other thing about Daredevil is like those runs are defined not just on the writers, it's on the artist-writer teams, which is hard to do now. Like Marco and I are trying to do it on Daredevil, but like I get it.
Amazing. He's amazing. I am so happy that I have been following his work since Punisher with Greg Rucka. And I always thought, man, this collection needs to be an oversized format because his art is almost like, I don't want to say anime influence, but there's some aspects of it are there, but just pumping with so much adrenaline. It's so good. So I'm so happy to see his work now being collected in an oversized hardcover format.
Gabe's saying you guys are killing on DD, therefore you must be friends. Okay, he asked. He didn't say therefore.
I think
you're Marco best friends. There's
one thing I've realized with writers and artists. Writers are best friends with their artists, and the artists hate the writers. Like this has got to be the case. Like,
is that what it is?
because the stuff I make Marco draw, I'm sure he's just like, oh my god, like another crowd scene. Oh my god, like 10 characters. Like, we get along really well. Like, I haven't met him yet. He's in Italy, and travel's a bit tricky these days.
Yeah.
But I think both of us are just like, we both feel kind of blessed that we've been paired together on this, and that we can have as much fun as we do on the title. I know it pains him to not draw every issue. Like, that's the downside, is the fact that like he can only really draw half of the issues, especially with the accelerated schedule. It kind of breaks my heart too, because I love all the other artists we work with, but I also know like there's something to having that continuity of an artist that really elevates a story. It's so jarring, even if we go to someone as great as like Jorge Fornes, who is kind of a master storyteller, but it's such a switch that you just like, even as a reader, you're just like, oh, okay, all right, I got to get used to this. I'm used to it. I'm used to it. Oh, it's back to Marco. Oh, okay, I've got to get used to that again. Like, it's a very strange thing. It'd be like watching a movie where in the middle, all of a sudden, it's directed by Quentin Tarantino, and then it goes back to Spielberg. Like, you just be like, what? Whoa, okay, all right.
Right, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like almost like AI, Kubrick and Steven Spielberg. You can definitely tell when Steven Spielberg stepped into AI.
Yeah, exactly. It's jarring, right?
You mentioned, well, you were a big fan of Vicente and John Romita Jr.'s run, but I remember like the Rick Leonardi issues, like the fill-in issues.
Yeah. Awesome. Sabretooth.
Like, they were great, but you're right. They were different. It's definitely a different type of tone.
There was even a Steve Ditko fill-in issue.
Yeah. Yep.
Which is wild. Like, that's a very different.
Especially at that time. Like, in the late 80s. Chip, if you can describe your writing like music, what would it be? Palmiotti and Connor describe themselves as rockabilly.
I think we asked this question before of other people.
This is a very tricky one because first, I'm bad at having a career. Like, I think when you think of an author, you think of a style of writing. Like Stephen King writes horror. That's what Stephen King does. Daniel Steele writes romance. Like, they pick a genre and they do it. Sometimes they, tiptoe elsewhere and do something different. Like Stephen King has done different types of books, but you're known for a thing. Like, I've done Jughead, Spider-Man, Daredevil, Howard the Duck, like Stillwater, Sex Criminals. Like, it's so all over the map.
Yeah.
Because I'm just writing the stuff that I like. I mean, everyone likes different stuff. Like, Stephen King doesn't just read or watch horror, right? But he focuses on writing that because that's how you build a career, and that's how you you have focus on a thing.
So
I don't. Yeah, so jazz. So basically,
jazz.
Yeah. I guess it's so jazz. Cool,
Chip.
Oh shit! It's jazz.
What? Why is that a bad thing?
I don't know.
You mentioned Stephen King. I remember the X-Men Heroes for Hope. Like, he wrote one page with Wolverine, my favorite character. And I was like, this is cool. Stephen King wrote a comic. He's legit now.
He's a comics fan. I mean, obviously his son is too.
Yeah, obviously.
But yeah, so it's hard to like kind of define my work because I'm bad at career. Like, I'm not building a very specific career. I'm just kind of doing things that I enjoy doing. I will say the music I write to is usually very sad orchestral stuff. Like the TV show The Leftovers is probably my favorite TV show of all time.
Wow.
And so I listen to the soundtrack, which is very sad. Mm-hmm. So when I'm writing Daredevil, I just got tears. Constant tears.
Oh,
and
man.
you can see it in your writing.
You should put on like Storage Wars or Pawn Stars in the background while you're writing, see where the story takes you. Kick it up a notch. Hell's Kitchen, something like that while you're writing.
God, I hit all of those. Those are like my breaks. Like, in between pages, I'm like, I'm just gonna watch another Pawn Stars clip.
Yes.
Yeah, something to slow down your brain.
This is from Paul Peterson. Chip, I feel you are the chosen one.
Look.
Wow, you're like Neo, dude. Like Neo in the Matrix.
Yeah. Let me tell you. I have 100% talked to people about this.
Batman and Daredevil crossover. Make it happen.
I have exactly talked to people in positions of power at both companies about this, and legally, it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
That's the big thing. Like, it would have been much easier if it was like 15 years ago, but the Warner Brothers, AT&T, whatever they are now, and the Disney of it makes it very, very tricky. But the way forward is just like, there are talks. I can't even say. Like, it's
I don't want to get you in trouble.
But I've definitely like started those kind of wheels turning just to see what could happen. And it's not that any individuals at the companies are against it. Like, I think everyone sees the potential for this kind of thing. It's that, how do they convince higher ups who have nothing to do with comics that it's okay to do this?
Yeah. I can see that. It is interesting. Like, you figured that the blind guy that can use like sonar, like other forms of seeing, would be called Batman and not Daredevil.
It doesn't make any sense, But like,
would he be a 7 out of 10 detective though?
We're not going to start
6
that
out of 10
conversation.
detective.
Okay, all right. So hear me out, Chip.
So look,
like these, but my subscribers, my viewers asked me one day, who's like the best occult detective. So they took my words out of context and how I would rate them. I made the mistake of rating a Batman a 6 out of 10, and man, they turned on me quick. And I was like, it was like occult detective. I think Scooby Doo was a better occult detective than Batman, but that was just me. I mean, we're talking about Phantom Stranger.
Okay, so here's the thing with your 6 out of 10. You're right and you're wrong.
Oh, okay. I like
basically,
that.
Basically, Batman would be, he'd come into the story at a 6 out of 10, and by the end he'd be a 10 out of 10, because that's what Batman does. He would come into an occult story not quite understanding, but because he's Batman, he'd figure it out. He
doesn't believe in ghosts, obviously.
He'd do the training. Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. But by the end, he'd be a 10 out of 10 detective.
He does the training in 10 pages. Okay, you're right. I stand corrected.
There you go.
But I am kind of right.
We put it to rest.
But look, let's back to Batman Daredevil.
Yes.
Like, in my mind, the way I picture it, it's myself and either Bendis or Tom King. They'd have to fight for second position, which, who doesn't want that?
Right.
Two bald guys going at it, and then Lee Weeks drawing it.
Oh, Lee Weeks, good choice.
Like, he's amazing on Batman. He did a run on Daredevil, which is fantastic. Like, come on, we'd sell dozens of copies.
Dozens of copies, dude. I'm surprised you went with Lee Weeks and not John Romita Jr., but it's the Chip Zdarsky.
There's some creators that like I love Romita Jr. so much, but I just want to see him do new things, right? Like, he's gonna be doing Fantastic Four, and I'm like, oh, that's such a good fit for him, because I think his style has kind of evolved to grand cosmic Fantastic Four style stuff more than the street stuff. Like, I think now he's a better fit for that. Whereas Lee Weeks, I think, has really kind of expanded the street level stuff with his kind of Batman stuff with Tom. But I think Lee would be pretty remarkable on something like this. I'm not saying I would say no to John Romita Jr. Like, my God, like, he's my art hero. I would love to have him on anything. But yeah, going back to Daredevil, that'd be a tricky one, I think. Yeah.
Any plans to expand your JL run after Last Ride, or is my answer already in my question?
Thank you, Michael.
I think your answer's already in the question. It's been a fun project. They basically just kind of gave me kind of carte blanche and said, just do a Justice League story. Doesn't matter which characters, what time period, just do the thing that you want to do. Because originally it was just going to be a digital only thing. But then they're like, oh, we like money. And so they turned it into a print thing as well. And it's super fun. It's just like scratching all the itches at once.
Gotcha. Alf, Sex Criminals crossover when? That's the burning question of the night.
This is because of all this is because of all the pussy eating talk online.
I had to tell her about
do you see my shirt? #Alf Omnibus.
No, I didn't. Wow.
Alf is life. Alf, what is it? Alf is life. Alf is God. I can't remember.
I don't think that's a real thing.
No, somebody wrote that fan letter. Anyway, it was just that
I was a huge Alf fan.
He likes Alf.
Huge Alf fan. I loved live action, and I loved the animated show. The animated show was quite good.
Really?
I didn't know there was one.
Oh yeah,
there was one.
Yeah, it's all about Melmac.
Sweet.
Come on. Come on.
I'm sorry, I failed at life.
Thanks, Chip. Now I got to deal with that.
Now I got to look it up.
After the show.
All right, let's go. Alpha Flight. Let me go to this question about what about writing the What If series? Do you enjoy it? I hope you do.
That's Spider-Man, Spider Shadow.
Wouldn't it be funny if I said I don't enjoy it?
I'm enjoying it.
We'd have to change.
But seriously, I thought the same question while I'm reading it. I'm like, this looks like it would be a lot of fun to write.
Yeah, no, it is. This is a long gestating thing because like a few years ago, I was in New York and I went for lunch with all these Marvel editors, and CB had just kind of become editor in chief, and he asked me to do a What If series. He's like, we want to bring back What If. We want you to write it. And I said, no. I said, not the way that it's normally done. Like the single issue What If stories.
You had a problem with that, Chip?
Back in the day, they were long. Like they went like 30, 40 pages. Like the original ones were quite long. Mm-hmm. But even with the added length, it was so exposition heavy, trying to catch you up on like what happened before, and then very much like this happens and now this happens and then this happens, just because of the nature of a What If story. So I didn't feel they were very satisfying as stories, even though they were like, oh, that's an interesting idea. You were never like invested in the characters the way you could be on a longer run. So I told him, I'm like, I would love to do it, but we'd have to do them as 3-4 issue stories, and we're not going to call them like What If Spider-Man kept the Venom suit, because that's a bad title for a book, frankly. But the example, and this is the thing that sold them, I said, like, the example is, what if they went ahead and called Marvel Zombies, What If the Marvel Universe became zombies? It would not have sold as well. Like, that's a bad title for a book. But the fact that they just called it Marvel Zombies makes it stand on the shelf for the rest of time. Like, that is a book on a shelf, instead of What If the Marvel Universe became zombies, which is not, that's just a question. That's not a title. So I convinced them to make it an imprint. And I got to design the logo, so that What If logo was me. And so all the stories are going to have their own distinct names. So Spider Shadow, like, that's the title of it. Mm-hmm. So in a way, we're treating it like Elseworlds, like Gotham by Gaslight isn't, What If Batman was around when
logo.
Yeah, like the Elseworlds logo is kind of like that, where you just kind of know by virtue of the logo you're dealing with an alternate universe story. Yeah. So I think it gives us the opportunity to tell longer, more interesting stories as creators, and also just have them stand the test of time on the shelf. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think I remember towards the end of the What If series in the 90s, they started calling it kind of like what you said. Like, they were maybe thinking about tweaking it, and they were like, What If starring Sabretooth? What If? And they made whoever was starring in it, like, their name was bold, so they would, cash in on that instead of the What If title. I see what you're saying. But yeah, so is there going to be more miniseries that you're working on in the What If realm?
Yeah, I'm on tap to do more. I haven't started more. I know of 2 or 3 other projects that they're doing with other creators, which are really cool. And yeah, it's the kind of project that I think Marvel creators want to do, because they're free of the continuity shackles, and they can kind of like let their mind go wild
wherever they want to.
Yeah, you can kind of do wild things with it. And so I'm hoping that this kind of launches a bunch of new ideas. And also, like, there are some projects in the works that could just be called What If. Like, someone's doing a future story. Well, okay, we'll put the logo on there. Like, you can create a full brand out of that What If imprint.
I really appreciated in the story how it was, you really grounded it though in the past work, right? Of the Spider-Man story. And I love the way you write JJJ.
Oh, thanks.
And like your Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man issue 6. Oh my gosh, I love that.
Oh, thanks. That was a fun one.
And I don't want to give away like spoilers, just your Eddie Brock, like how he came in. I was like, that right, like fangirling, like because I love Venom. That was a really nice touch. It wasn't like shoved and forced in your face. It was like surprise, at least to me. And I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah. Those moments are really fun, and it's funny, talking about these being, free of continuity. They're a lot more continuity tight than I expected, because I'm still following continuity. So I have to make sure, like, okay, would Eddie be at this stage at this point to do this maybe? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And like one of the questions I had, like, I wanted Ben Grimm in there, but I'm just like, oh, but wouldn't he be on Battle World and She-Hulk would be in the FF? Maybe if I tweak it a bit, where it's just like, maybe a year has passed since this started. Like, yeah, you have to. And I remember even just like looking up for Pascal to draw in the last couple of issues. Like, there's other superheroes that show. I'm like, okay, so if I had Ben Grimm there, then who's in the Avengers at this point? Like,
well, that's really cool that you did like your research, and I think it's a great balance between right. What if this isn't continuity, but let's make it, grounded in it so that it's even more fun.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that I'm kind of, I'm tweaking a little bit to make it work. Because a lot of stuff has happened with the symbiote since those stories. The symbiote itself isn't evil. So I'm kind of pumping that up a little bit here, probably more so than it's played out in the Venom books, right? But yeah, I mean, these are super fun to do.
Really, this whole mini series, it could have been called, and just hear me out. What if Peter Parker had said, "No, thank you, Mr. Richards. I'm going to keep the damn Venom suit."
I like it.
And you can go F yourself. Just an idea. The next retreat that you guys have. I can help you create. I can help you. I'll redraw the rebrand for you. I'll do that for you.
And then Reed counters and says, "I think you meant to say go FF yourself."
See, that's why you're funny. That's why you're
funny. Yeah.
Lionheart, thank you for the super chat. To ask you for a Judge Judy omnibus.
All right. So the story behind this is I was opening up a box of Judge Dredd comics. And my youngest daughter, is like, what is Judge Dredd? I'm like, he's a judge in the future. And he can shoot people. And she's like Judge Judy? And I'm like, no, yes, just like Judge Judy. That's where that came from. This is a really good question here.
Judge Judy omnibus.
All right. Can you speak to what you want to bring to Daredevil that differentiates you from other runs? I think in your first story arc, you did that, though. You were able to do that because, to me, that Daredevil, without giving anything away, seems like an older Daredevil than most of the ones that I've read in the past.
Yeah, I mean, like, the whole kind of run is about violence, and it's about the impact of violence, because so much of the superhero stuff is rooted in that, right? Like, that's the imagery, right? Spider-Man punching somebody, Captain America punching somebody, Wolverine gutting somebody. And we kind of were a little numb to it. Like, I think, I even remember as a kid, like, my parents flipping through the comics and be like, whoa, geez, these guys are fighting. I'm like, well, yeah, it's superheroes do.
That's what
but it's not how you generally handle situations in the real world. So, trying to root this series in the questions of violence and your place, and when is violence okay in society, and who gets to make those decisions, and so, like, now that we're at the stage where, spoiler, Daredevil's in prison, it now becomes about, like, how do you punish people, and what is punishment? Like, should punishment be about the punishment, or should it be about trying to make you a better person and correct the behavior? Is it about protecting society, or is it about like helping the individual, or providing solace to the victims? So, and we're going to go even farther beyond that in the next couple of years of the run.
Wait. Years.
Well, like I've got a plan right now that takes me to issue 50.
Oh, keep talking to me, Chip. Let's keep going. It's a rarity these days for a writer and a team to stay on a book for 2 years, and you're like living the high life. So
because you're adding all this philosophical stuff in it. That's what makes it engaging, right?
You bring a lot of yourself on there in there too. So I think it's great that you have this plan.
Daredevil is a very specific title at Marvel where when writers get on it, you're afforded kind of more freedom than you would any other book, because Daredevil's not an Avenger. He's not an X-Men. He's not a cosmic character. Like, he doesn't tie into things the way other characters do. So I can put Matt Murdock out of costume for 6 issues and not even really have to run that by anybody. If I was doing Spider-Man and I did that, like, those are discussions. Like, you have to get a lot of buy-in for a character like that who has multiple titles and shows up everywhere, right? Daredevil doesn't. Like, he's its own thing. Which kind of means you get to really dig deeper into the character, and the readership is pretty steady on it, from my understanding. And I think that's because people are reading it. They're not just buying it for speculator stuff, though the Elektra stuff kind of.
I was going to say the Elektra stuff.
Well, you get sucked in that, I finished one volume and then I have to read the next one because it's because you're thinking of the long game. Is that the term? Long game.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Job.
All right. Yeah, I used the term correctly. So I'm like, oh shoot, I gotta find out what happens next.
Yeah.
So yeah, props to you. Like that's really cool, right?
Yeah, I mean, and like,
I like that.
You stay on it until you feel it's time to go. Like, there's not too many people. I mean, it happens. We are pulled off a book. Like, Lord knows, I had Star-Lord canceled at issue 2. Like, I got the call when issue 2 was hitting stands that, hey, we're only going to 6. Like, oh, okay. Howard the Duck, we were able to walk off that book because we finished our story. And we're like, okay, let's do that, which confused people.
Your first omnibus with your name on it, man.
Yeah, that's gonna be super fun.
How exciting is that?
Yeah, because that feels like a very complete story too. So I'm really excited about that one.
So let's go in there, because I'm the guy that got to announce that. So that's very, very cool.
Yes.
And then you came out and said you're not a fan of Omnis, and you like covers. And then this whole thing happened between you and I. They're like, this man's trying to put Omar out of a job, and I was like,
you can't dress
Chip
up
Zdarsky. This the whole reason I invited you on the
No.
show was to call you out. I'm just kidding.
No, I'm creating tension, which drives viewers.
Oh, is that what
People love that kind of tension.
everything is wrestling. Everything.
Personally, Omnis aren't my thing. I find them inherently hard to read. The cheaper version of a thing is usually the one that I default to. Like, I prefer I even prefer trades over hardcovers, just because like they feel better in bed. I read in bed. Like, I remember like the first Omni I bought was Locus, which was a collection of Love and Rockets.
Yeah, Love and Rockets. Look at you, man. Read that stuff. That's.
I'm an indie man. But it's a brick. It's like a huge thing, and like I just literally couldn't read it. Like, I'd be in bed and it's like just crushing my nuts, and I'm just like, oh god, like
I have to sit up in bed.
That should be on the next blurb. This omnibus is crushing my nuts. Chip Zdarsky.
I view them as art objects. Like I think they're quite lovely pieces of art. My hope is that Marvel and DC don't, fuck it up, frankly, and make them cheaper and cheaper looking, which is its own thing. I could go on for a long time about the companies.
You would complain.
Because I think they should be special. Like, I think what's happened right now in the market, is there were single issues and there were trades, and trades used to be very special, and they would have special designs on them and stuff, and then kind of hardcovers kind of came into the scene, and then trades started to feel like single issues, cheaper paper. They would just use the same cover as the single issues. The design on it was like boilerplate, and I'm worried now that the hardcovers are going to suffer because the omnibuses are even a bigger thing. So now the hardcovers are going to look boilerplate, templated. Like my big fight with Marvel, not a fight, but was to make them special. I just want them to be special. If someone's going to spend this kind of money on a thing, like a hardcover big ass book, it should have a new cover. It should have like interesting design.
Yeah, I like the way you think, man. Yeah.
I want them to be really good. I don't want them to just be big, hard to read single issues.
Something that Kat said earlier, why aren't you on like the editorial team, or you've got great ideas that
like Marvel, to their credit, like they do listen to me once in a while instead of just patting my head.
Oh, that's what they do.
I mean, the meaning thing. Okay,
it is.
Is it okay?
There have been cases like Spider-Man Life Story. I got to do all the individual covers for that series and the trade cover. And I designed it specifically for the book market because I wanted like a big Spider-Man head on it. I want people to look at it from across the room and go, "Oh, there, I know that guy. I got to go see what that book is."
Right.
So Marvel does let me once in a while get in there and play with the design of things. We had a mishap on I can't even go into it, but like we did have a case where there was a hardcover that was going to have like a special new cover, but the departments didn't talk to each other and it kind of fell apart. So there's like this beautiful cover that didn't make it onto the thing that I designed. I'm just like, it's hard in a company where there's so many moving parts to kind of protect the quality of the product, because they put out so much too. Like, every week, like dozens of products shipped from Marvel out into the world from a handful of editors.
Format possible. Hardcovers, Masterworks, Epic Collections, trade paperbacks, and on top of that, the single issues that this stuff, is based on. So
I know it's a lot. It's a lot. Like the editors are, even in non-COVID times, they're run ragged with the amount of product they've got to put out. So it's very hard to kind of have an eye on that kind of thing. DC used to be better at it because they just had more staff. They had people dedicated to all these different stages and actual designers and art directors. And that's getting harder too, as they cut staff, and the product can suffer as a result, or at least the package can,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm glad to hear a creator gets to go in there from time. I know there's the case of Donny Cates with Absolute Carnage, the omnibus. I got to hear behind the scenes of that, like how that all happened. David Gabriel, who runs the collected editions department, they wanted to make a hardcover. And then Donny Cates kept texting him going, "Well, why don't we add this?" Or, "Hey, how about we add this too? Don't forget this." And he was like, "Fine, we'll make it an omnibus." And that's kind of how it got, made. And then I always think of like Jonathan Hickman. Jonathan Hickman, like it's like he oversees, these books. No, all the covers in the back. I want people to experience this like they're reading a book. Keep all the covers in the back, and he does that with his own independent stuff. Like
I can see both.
Like image works like East to West and things like that.
Yeah, and like sometimes you just have to be at a certain level to be able to pull that off. Like I know Jonathan is a very special case because he's like top of his game 100% all the time, and no company wants to piss him off. So they and they know his product looks great. So why wouldn't you tap into Hickman for like design stuff like that? It's harder for the newer writers and artists. But Marvel's pretty good at listening. Like, and a lot of times they're just like, oh, someone wants to do a thing and we don't have to get someone else to do it. Great. Like I designed the Fantastic Four X-Men logo and all the design pages in that. Because I was inspired by Hickman and what he was doing with those design pages, and I wanted to kind of like find them.
Crazy, man! Those things were nuts. How much time that goes into those?
I know, and I want to find like a mix of like Fantastic Four style plus that new X-Men style that Hickman was coming up with Tom Muller, his designer, and And I would run it by him too, because I respect Jonathan a lot. Like, Jonathan would be like, no, you can't do that. No, that's no good. Like, okay, all right. He's like the dad I want to please at all times. But Marvel's good with it because it's a thing they don't have to worry about then. Like, if they know I'm doing the design on it, they're like, okay, great. We don't have to like hire this guy over here. Perfect.
It's in good hands. I like that.
Would Marvel be interested in a Daredevil life story?
They would be interested in all sorts of things, I'm sure. When Spider-Man Life Story started coming out and was doing well, they did talk to me about doing more life stories. We had kind of a whole range of characters that we could do.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just so hard. Like, doing Spider-Man Life Story, it took months and months and months just as like prep work, because I reread all of Amazing Spider-Man to make sure I wasn't like kind of missing things, and to make sure like kind of my timeline worked. And then I had to create like another timeline of real world events and another timeline of the character ages, and then figure out what the story was.
But it showed. Like, for people that have been reading comics for a long time, we appreciated things like that. You're like, oh my God, this guy put in the work, because you're adding, yes, it's an alternate reality and you have the freedom to do what you want, but it's an alternate reality that relies on
the what if
a deep history of Spider-Man.
Shadow that is grounded. There's the work that's done beforehand, and you're respecting it and you're acknowledging it and you're working off of it.
I also, and just stupidly, I gave myself all these constraints on that book. Like I had to tackle all the events that were major within the decades that they happened in the publishing plan, and keep them in line with the ages based on their first appearances, and create a story out of it. So it was stupid. I'm glad it worked. But I've also got a thing, like, I never say yes to a project unless I know I'm going to be able to devote all my energy to it. Like, if I said yes to doing Fantastic Four life story, I wouldn't have done as good a job on that as I did on Spider-Man Life Story, and that would suck, because like, people are buying these things. Like, I remember what it was like, shelling out my hard-earned money for these comics, and like, once in a while you pick one up, you're like, oh, okay, I guess it was a fill-in team this issue or whatever. Like, that sucks. Or if the story doesn't hold up, or the artist kind of phones it in.
Like the ending of X-Men versus Avengers. Was Roger Stern didn't even get to finish the story. I remember as a kid going, what the hell happened? This is leading into Magneto being a villain again. How did this? Oh, man.
I had it, like, I think it was Adventures of Captain America, which was drawn by Kevin McGuire and colored by Paul Mounts. And it was the most beautiful book. And by the end, they had a fill-in artist because Kevin didn't hit the deadline or whatever. And, it wrecked me. I was so upset. But yeah, so you don't want to, I never want to do a job just to do the job or to collect a paycheck. And I'm grateful I'm in a position that I don't have to do that. Like Sex Criminals, it didn't make me rich, but it pays for me to live, right?
Yeah.
So the Marvel stuff is like, this sounds kind of reductive, but like, Sex Criminals pays for the house, Marvel pays for the groceries.
Love it. I love hearing
So
that.
it's like, I don't have to say yes to everything, which means I can kind of make the decisions not based on like a desperation, but the decisions are based on, do I have a story to tell, and do I have the bandwidth to tell it?
Bandwidth.
Yeah.
Wow.
with your problem with What If, and I'm sorry, I'm like the 90 series, I assume, when you said that you didn't really get to get involved with the characters, and because they were, we're looking at 24 pages compared to the original 30 plus 40 plus pages of the What If. So what's the original idea for Life Story miniseries instead of one issues? Like, each decade was going to be a miniseries, because I feel like there's so much, and then, man, that would be a task too.
It's very jam-packed. I'm eternally grateful that we got 30 pages for each of those issues. No, when I approached Tom, the editor, about it, I pitched it as 12 issues about the Marvel Universe. So it wasn't about Spider-Man. It was going to be retelling the Marvel Universe over 12 issues, which would be like a decade for every 2 issues. And the characters I was going to use were Logan, because he doesn't age. So he would be the one, or doesn't age as quickly as others. So he'd be the one who, through the decades, would stay relatively the same as he watched his friends and enemies get older.
Yeah.
So it's going to be him, and it's going to be Reed Richards. And there's going to be a whole plot about Reed Richards wondering what was going on with the timeline. Like, I had a story that involved why this was the way it was. So I presented it to Tom, and Tom's been there for 30 years, I think. Like, he's like their oldest editor at Marvel. So he has a real deep institutional memory. And so he was like, yeah, this idea. He's like, people have pitched it before. Because it's not a new idea. Like, John Byrne did Generations over at DC.
Yeah, with Superman, Batman, right.
Yeah, and so he was like, I don't think you can do the Marvel Universe. I think you need to focus. I think you need a main character and just focus on one character. And I was just coming off of Spectacular Spider-Man, so he was like, people want to see more Spider-Man stuff from you, so you should do Spider-Man. I was like, I really wanted to do the big story, but Tom is one of those editors. I told him this yesterday. I was on a call with him yesterday, and I was like, I hate you, Tom, because you always have these big sweeping changes, and 95% of the time you're right. And it drives me crazy. He once made me, it didn't make me, but he once made me rewrite an entire issue 2 days before press, because it wasn't working. Like, the art was done, and I had to rewrite the whole issue. Like, but he's right. Yeah, I had to change character motivations. I had to like change the types of characters. Like, and he's right. That's the thing. Tom is so smart. He's always correct. So he said, make it about Spidey, and he also said, I mean, he had the perfect name for it. It wasn't called Life Story at that point. He said this should be called Marvel Age, because it's Marvel Age. This character's aging. It's like such a perfect title for it. But then it was probably David Gabriel, frankly, who said, no, we can't call it that. Like, we already had a thing called Marvel Age come out. It was like a kid's line. There'd be confusion.
Oh, right.
So I'm like, God damn it. Like, it's such a good, like, Life Story is good as a title, but Marvel Age is like, it sums it up. It's perfect.
I like Life Story.
I've grown to like it. I've grown to like it. But Marvel Age, like, it's like,
that does
so many regrets.
Okay. That leaves it open for others, right? It's a branding as opposed to Spider-Man Life Story. Like, you just think of Spider-Man, right?
So is Life Story Daredevil Life Story?
No, it is
Super
easily
Pro Life Story.
Spider-Man Marvel Age, Captain America Marvel Age. You can still do the same thing.
Oh no,
in
absolutely.
my head, Marvel Age is more open. I just like Life Story better.
Yeah,
that's it. That's my 2 cents.
Okay.
Come on, bye.
That was the whole point of this interview, was
Yeah,
so she could put her 2 cents in.
Waiting
for that.
Marvel Age.
Oh man, so with you working on Daredevil, and now you're doing books at DC, right? Man, when do you sleep, brother?
Somebody
great question.
Asked that question earlier.
It's actually really bad. Like, I'm actually just gonna take a look right now at my project list.
While you're doing that, this question right here, Omar, any word on Daredevil Volume 2 hardcover? Yes, it's coming out, I think, in January or December.
Is it?
Yeah.
No idea.
I
find out from you. I have no idea.
When I tag you.
And I don't like that. I wish creators knew when their stuff was coming out.
Why are you trying to take my job?
I mean,
dude, it's just I feel like
the Daredevil stuff's easy because there's a Daredevil guy online on Twitter that is at Man Without Fear, who just posts everything about Daredevil. Like, I know when my stuff's coming out.
That guy retweets my stuff. You gonna give that guy?
Yeah, no, he's like, he's a great guy. I met him once, and I've done interviews with him.
Oh, good.
He's a Daredevil obsessive, so like, he knows these things before I do, and then I find out from him. Like, I don't mind finding out.
No, he's a really nice guy. He retweets my stuff. I was just messing. To clarify.
He's great. Yeah, he's great.
Gotcha.
So what's your schedule?
Oh yeah, sorry, I just counted 13. I've got 13 projects.
Wow.
Which is bad. Like, it shouldn't be that. I was up to like 10 at one point, and my wife was like, "You got to get rid of some of these." I'm like, "You're right." But then a few things happened this past month that I wasn't expecting to happen, and all of a sudden I've got 13 projects, which is not a healthy way to live. It's gonna be bad. One of them I have to draw, so I'm like, shit.
Oh
Like,
wow, dude. Yeah, you're gonna be busy.
I'm in trouble. Yeah. Basically, it's funny. I just went on a whole thing about devoting time to the work, and here I am. I have to do like fucking 3 scripts a week, but it's fine.
I'm glad you're able to say no to things then, right? Like the approaching you for projects. Like you have said no. Like
it's hard. It's hard because as a freelancer, like you have the thing in your head, like you can't say no. If you say no to somebody, they won't ask you again.
Yeah.
You take on too much. I turned down a DC book yesterday, so I wanted to do, and I got another email that just came in about another one I got to turn down. So it's like it's nice. It's nice to feel wanted.
It's good. It's good.
Yeah.
So you get to turn down stuff. It's a good place to be instead of being the guy that's like, man, nobody's called once.
And I'll be that. Like that's the other thing. Like I think every comic writer, especially if they're in a hot phase, they have to recognize early that that's not going to be the case forever.
Right.
Like I think most comic writers have a shelf life of like 5 to 10 years where they're consistently getting work. They know all the editors. And then you just kind of get old and maybe you have a couple of bombs and like people don't call, someone didn't buy a creator-owned thing. You get too much gray in your beard. Like it happens. It happens to talented people. And you make hay while the sun shines, but you also have to like mentally be prepared that no one's career is a constant upward trajectory. It's just not. It's a humiliating industry because of that. Like, I don't know if your parents were the same as mine, but my parents basically had careers. They got a job, they kept that job. Yeah. One of them got a pension, they had a retirement party, and then they were done. In comics, you don't have that. You just don't. Like you're always scrambling, and at some point you're going to be, the old guy in Artist Alley doing drawings of Thor for $20, and like I've pre-accepted that. I know that's going to be me, so I'm just like, okay, you have a good time now. Maybe in the future it's not going to feel like you're wanted or desired, and you just kind of have to get used to it before it happens. Just like that's life in this industry. It's not good, but it's also like that's what happens, right?
Man, gotcha. I think about that. I think about all the all the people that are, like you said, on Artist Alley that at one time were just big guns everywhere. You would see their name everywhere, and then for a while they disappear because either they got injured or they got somebody else cheaper and faster to come and do the job. And it's heartbreaking because these are the names that you grew up with. I mean, these are the names of my youth, of all these characters that I grew up with. These are the storytellers. Yeah. And it sucks. I know unless you don't have a contract, right, at DC or Marvel, like there is, by the way, I don't know if many people know this, but like there is no insurance. No. There's none of that. You don't get any benefits. It's almost like you're saying, your contract work, freelance work. Your name is on a book. Yeah. So absolutely. That's.
Yeah. The danger is when you link your self-worth to the work, because when people stop liking the work, then your self-worth goes down. Like a few years ago, like after Sex Criminals came out, I was doing a lot of conventions and it was very exciting. And I remember being on like an airport shuttle with a comic creator and artist, and he used to draw in the 80s. I won't say who he was, but he's a guy who drew in the 80s. I used to read his stuff. He wasn't top level, but he was really good. And I was talking to him and his wife. I'm like, hey, so like, what have you been doing? Like, since you were doing all this stuff at Marvel DC. And he described like, just like one day he just stopped getting the calls. And he's like, he was drawing like the top characters, and all of a sudden, like, they didn't need him anymore. Like his style wasn't fresh or whatever. And he panicked. He didn't know what to do. And he had to make his mortgage. And so he just like, he opened like the classified ads and found an ad to learn computers on the job for this a delivery company. And he never turned a computer on. And he went and he got this job and he learned computers and he worked his way up in this company. He's like the IT guy at a company. Far cry from drawing Fantastic Four or Superman. But he was happy, and he discovered that these conventions would fly him and his wife in, and he would be able to sit at a table and meet fans and draw drawings of these characters for a little bit of extra money. He's like, great. And I was just like, oh, it's amazing that like it feels like such a crushing thing to have that kind of taken away from you, but also like realization that that's not your worth, that like you're still yourself, and like you did what you had to do and you got a job and like they live a comfortable life, and then you have this thing afterwards of drawing these characters. Like it'd be better if the companies treated you better, but I think you have to steel yourself to not be tied up again to self-worth with these companies and with these characters. So when that end does come, which it's going to for me, probably 5 years, if I had to like wager a guess based on the trajectory of most careers, I just got to be okay with it. I got to be like, all right, yeah, I had my moment, and now I don't have my moment, but maybe I put aside enough money that I'm okay. Maybe I get a job teaching. I don't know. But like, it's hard. It's hard because there's a lot of ego stuff in this industry, right?
Absolutely.
Because, people are telling you you're really good. And like, oh, wow, like you introduced me to comics, or,
I'm sure you hear that a lot because you are a damn good writer, dude. It does help. And
I appreciate it. But
you're like, and you hear that. You have to. I'm sure all the time people are like, this is the best Spider-Man, or you got your Daredevil made me come back to read Daredevil. I haven't read Daredevil since Frank Miller's run. It is.
Well, and I think
it's nice, but
odd dichotomy too, when you like here you're creating something that speaks to people's hearts that people can lose themselves in, right? And for that, you should get respect. And then because it's also his business, right? That, like you said, then you're like, go, because we need somebody else in. Man, yeah, that is a really hard lesson, huh?
It's hard, but it's like it's the business of pop culture, and pop culture by its nature is transitory.
Especially now, right?
Absolutely now.
Yeah.
Like
all the pop stars from the 90s, how many of them are like still riding high now? Like
Justin Timberlake. Oh God, why would I know that?
There you go. But even Justin Timberlake, like his last album didn't do well. Like he's probably sitting at home, like just like in a dark room, staring at a wall, being like, "What do I do now?" Like, even if he has the money, it's like, well,
got it.
For the most
Justin
part,
Timberlake life story or Marvel Age.
There you go. Do it.
There you go, Chip. There's your idea.
Well,
God.
okay. And I know your time is important, so thank you so much.
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Man, we haven't even
you let
talked
us know.
about
you let
manga.
Us know. Yeah, I wanted to. People were talking about manga at the beginning, so I thought let's bring it back. You read manga?
It does manga.
Okay. So yeah, I do a podcast called Manga Explaining. A couple of years ago, just pre-pandemic, there's kind of like this weird. There's a Toronto Comics Festival. They do a kind of an exchange thing with Japanese festivals.
Okay.
And so I got to be a part of that group, and we went to Tokyo. I did Tokyo Comic Con, which was a lot of fun. But I don't know anything about manga. I don't really know anything about Japan. But all my friends that I went with, other comics people, do, and they love it. So we're going to these manga museums for creators and properties. I have no idea what they are. Like whole buildings dedicated to like Kamen Rider or whatever. Like I'm just like, okay, sure. And at some point we were like, it'd be funny to like teach me about manga in a podcast called Manga Explaining. And so that's what we've done. It was kind of our pandemic project where every week we would have a new book, and it'd be my first time reading it. And
gotcha.
They would kind of give me some backstory, some history, and stuff about cultural things and stuff to do with manga. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun. We've read like 20 books so far, and it's really. I'm sorry?
Which story stuck with you? Which one spoke to you?
The funny ones I really liked. There's one called Way of the House Husband.
Yeah, the guy that used to be in the Yakuza.
Yeah. Yeah, but he's now just an extremely supportive house husband to his graphic designer wife. It's very good. It's super funny. It's the closest in sense of humor to Hawkeye, like Fractions Hawkeye, that I could find. Like I started texting panels to Matt just to be like, you've got to read this. It's so good. We just read one called, I'm gonna butcher it. I think it's called Monthly Girls Nokizuka, maybe. I'm terrible with Japanese names. But it's about like a high school student that it turns out he's also like a girl's manga artist.
Oh, okay.
And it's like his secret life, and so it's all about him and these people around him and his friends, like working on manga comics. And it's super super funny. Netflix has an anime about it.
Okay. Where can people listen to this Manga Explaining?
Mangasplaining.com. And we have the show
go.
notes. Like the one host, Chris, does these amazing show notes with like all the panels that we talk about and anecdotes.
Wow.
Like it's a really comprehensive project. But yeah, there have been a ton of amazing books, and it's really opened my eyes to kind of new ways to tell stories. It's a very different market. But yeah, Manga Explaining. We try and do one every week.
Gotcha.
When you're talking about you weren't very familiar with manga or Japan, then how did you handle the hand? Did you just have to retcon it and make them from like Seattle? This is the Seattle station of the hand coming over.
Yeah, I know. I just tapped into all my knowledge of Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah,
and the foot.
Instead of writing the foot, you wrote the hand. Very nice.
Yeah. I remember I was probably like in my 20s when I found out that Ninja Turtles were just like ripping off Daredevil.
Yeah, it's an interesting realization when you're like, oh wait, the foot.
Yeah.
The hand, God.
Well, it's the same ooze. Like the ooze that turned them into the Ninja Turtles is the stuff that blinded Matt Murdock. No, that's true.
I never realized that. Oh my!
Yeah,
gosh, my mind is blown.
That's the absolute truth.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure I've shared that with her before, like 10 years ago. Did not have this reaction. She's like, what?
There you go. Yeah.
Like, what the hell? I said the same thing 10 years ago.
But I'm saying it from a position of authority.
Yeah, Omar. Did you watch a TED Talk? No, you didn't. There
what?
You go.
Why am I getting blasted? For not know. Okay, fine. Sorry.
If he tells us something that's not from a TED Talk, I don't believe him. You gotta cite your sources. Okay?
I don't even know what that means. I stopped citing sources in college.
No one's buying tickets for Omar Talk.
This is so true.
No,
this
that's
is so
the
true.
channel, though.
I remember you really enjoying Akira's art a lot. That's my buddy Kong.
Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's Ultimo's artwork is phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's funny. Like, I knew of Akira, and I've never seen Akira before, so I kind of assumed all manga looked like Akira, like that level. And then, like, as we've been going through some of the books, I'm like, oh, some of these are not as good. Like,
right.
My it's kind of a nice realization knowing that not all of Japan has outdone the American market. That there's a lot of manga that is just like poorly drawn.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, that actually fills me with joy somehow.
Way to stick it to the manga creators. Yeah. Not all you guys are great.
Yeah.
Not everybody can be Otomo. Let's see here. So yeah, when can people expect the Daredevil? Maybe you'll have an easier time. Daredevil Ninja Turtles. They just met Batman.
Yeah,
that is true. I don't think Daredevil and Ninja Turtles would ever happen because then they would have to actually deal with the fact that it's ripping off Daredevil.
They're like, "What? You got the hand? We got the foot."
Yeah.
Come on, Splinter.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a lawsuit waiting to happen, probably.
I'm sure. I'm sure it's already It's already happened.
Yeah.
So what can we expect from Chip Zdarsky after years on Daredevil, probably a 20-year run on Daredevil, wrapping it up with Daredevil life story?
Yeah, what can I even talk about? So right now it's like, yeah, we got a couple more issues of Spider-Man, Spider Shadow.
Mhm.
We got a few more issues of Justice League Last Ride. A couple more of Batman Urban Legends. That's been fun. Batman and Red Hood.
Yeah.
That's all the DC stuff I can talk about. I got one more DC thing coming out, which is really cool. It's Batman based. At Marvel, I've got kind of an Avengers-y thing happening, which is fun.
Avengers. Okay.
Avengers-y.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's an adjective now.
Yeah.
Avengers.
Daredevil probably at least through to issue 50, depending on if Marvel wants me to stick around. It gets big. Like the Daredevil stuff gets really big in the next year.
Awesome.
I'm working on a big secret project for Marvel right now. Definitely the biggest thing I've done, which is
Wow.
cool.
Big secret project, huh?
It's big at the level where I've written 100,000 words of this thing, and I haven't even gotten issue 1 out the door yet. Like it's one of those books where there's a lot of notes, a lot of talk. It's going to be a thing.
Dang.
So that's fun.
Wow.
And there's another mini series coming up that's kind of Daredevil adjacent.
Any more ongoing series that?
No, not for Marvel or DC. Everything I'm doing for them besides Daredevil are minis.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I don't have the bandwidth. I trick myself into thinking, it's easier to do a mini series, and then I end up having to write 10 of them at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, Daredevil's my only ongoing series. It might be my last ongoing series. I don't know. And then Stillwater. I'm doing Stillwater for Skybound. I'm probably going to go to at least issue 20.
All right, that would make a good hardcover.
I don't know what Skybound does with hardcovers. Like I've only ever bought the trades, obviously.
They've done quite a few. They've done Invincible, Walking Dead. Those are available in hardcover format and in big format too. They get crazy, and then there's like exclusive Skybound compendiums, hardcover editions.
So I'd imagine they'd do one. Like, I don't keep track of how the book's doing. I mean, we've got a couple nominations for Eisner's for it, so I think that might help speed up the hardcover process.
And if you got 20 issues, that's a good thick book.
Yeah, hopefully.
The White Trees.
Yes, I mean, I've written the sequel to it fully. Chris has started drawing it, but Chris also, he's got a day job right now. He's working on Spider-Verse 2, which is super cool.
Wow.
I'm sorry, what is that? Spider-Verse?
Spider something. So that's like his day job right now. So so he's not drawing comics right now as a result, but he promised me he'd jump back into it when he's done. I've got a killer promo image too that's killing me not to share with people. What else? I've got a new thing that I'm going to be drawing, probably for Image. Another thing that I'm going to write, someone else is going to draw, probably for Image. I've got 5 issues fully done of an Image book that hasn't been announced.
You're really good at keeping secrets, Chip.
I know.
Yeah, you are too, baby.
I know, but
when people ask you to blink once or twice for blah blah blah, you keep your eyes open the whole time, like Orange Clockwork.
I knew,
or Clockwork Orange, whatever it's called.
I knew about like your Howard the Duck omnibus, and I almost wanted to email you, but I signed an NDA, so I can't say anything. I almost wanted to say, man, your name is gonna be in an omnibus, and then you're gonna be like, oh man, Daredevil's gonna get an omnibus. That's cool. And then when you watch it, I'm like, no, it's Howard the Duck, man. Howard the Duck is getting an omnibus.
Howard the Duck. I think Invaders beat it to the punch.
Invaders got a hardcover, and we're getting Marvel 2-in-1 hardcover. The name Chip Zdarsky, Life Story, is getting a hardcover, oversized hardcover with the annual. So the name Chip Zdarsky, man, it's drawing quite a bit of attention. So I think this legacy of yours, of this 5 years, dude, you're going to be around for a long time. It's going to be stapled.
We'll see. I'm super looking forward to the Howard the Duck one because that's another one where every issue is drawn by Joe Quinones except for 2, and Veronica Fish drew one, And yet we still didn't put Fish and Chip on the cover. I can't believe we didn't do that. It haunts me to this day. And then Kevin McGuire, who's like my art hero, did one of the issues in it too. And it is, I'm really proud of that as a whole story.
Were
So
you a fan
I
of
hope people like it.
Justice League International years?
Oh God, it's my favorite run of anything.
Oh, dude, you're a smart
love
guy.
those.
Chip.
I
You're an
love
awesome
those.
guy.
Somebody was asking earlier, do you buy your works, right? Like you got your collection, like when the Daredevil OHC, or it wasn't OHC, was it?
Yeah,
What I'm saying, it was okay. Do you buy them?
Marvel is pretty good at sending me stuff.
Okay, good.
Though, I mean, so here's the one thing. So I've been out west for almost a year now, and my house in Toronto, friends just keep putting the boxes into my front hallway. So I haven't seen a physical version of my comics in so long. Like I have no idea. So I'm assuming they sent me the hardcover for Invaders. I know they sometimes do, sometimes don't. I'll never buy my work. I just won't. Like I would just feel weird doing it. So if there's a hardcover and Marvel didn't send it to me, I'll probably just never own it. Like that's just what's going to happen. So yeah, that's that.
People got excited when they found out you're Canadian. They're like, "What? He's Canadian?"
Me and Jeff Lemire.
There you go.
It's just the only two Canadian creators.
There's a bunch of us, but
yeah, there is.
I feel like no matter how successful I get, Jeff Lemire's always like right above me, always, forever. I'm like, just when I think I'm pulling ahead, all of a sudden there's like a Netflix Sweet Tooth show. Like, God damn you! He's so fast and talented.
You still got the Sex Criminals. I mean, is that still a show in the works, or what's going on with that?
It is a. I'm not going to say nightmare.
We all live in Lemire's shadow.
We all live in Lemire's shadow. It's okay.
We do. We really do. Universal bought the rights years ago, and then they had a deal with. I might as well say I don't know if it's a secret. I think it was with Amazon, and then it turns out when you have multiple companies doing a thing, you get a lot of notes on it. Matt wrote a lot of drafts of a pilot for a bunch of different people, and never quite got anywhere. And so I think the rights came back to us, and now there's more people interested in it. So who knows? Who knows? All that stuff's just such a mystery to me. Like I'm dealing with it on a couple of my Image properties, and I'm just kind of trusting my agent, my lawyer, to just like handle it. I'm like, I don't know.
Let somebody handle it. And then you got to get a lawyer for that lawyer. Make sure to keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
You don't get, just saying.
Luca, how does Chip not burn himself out? He jumps in the lake that's available 5 to 10 days out of the year.
Yep. It's funny. I was actually talking to a fellow Daredevil writer, Charles Soule, about this the other day. We were texting back and forth, and we were talking about like future projects and stuff and whether to say yes to things. And Charles said that he read something recently that said if you are feeling worried that you're about to burn out, you've burnt out. Like that's the feeling. Like as soon as you feel like you're in danger of burning out, guess what? You've already burnt out. So I'm like, oh, okay, that's what this feeling is. That's why I'm not sleeping full nights. I don't know. It's like, yeah, I am burnt out. But I mean, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. If you say no to enough things and then the miniseries disappear, then it'll just be me and Daredevil hanging out in a tree. Perfect. Perfect. Oh yeah.
In a tree?
In a tree.
So that I can say KISSING?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet. Head cannon.
Yeah, McFarlane's Canadian too. I should say, yeah, McFarlane kind of trumps myself and Jeff Lemire, I guess, just by virtue of being McFarlane.
I mean, he's just a guy.
I met him once. It was like the backstage for like an Image Expo. Like, I grew up on his Spider-Man. Like, I love it.
Oh God, yeah.
And he was just so cool. I think he had like an assistant with him or whatever. So we were kind of backstage where they're serving sandwiches, and McFarlane was like taking a bite of his sandwich and like putting on the plate of his assistant. Like it was just such a cool power move. It was just like, yeah, man.
Mhm.
So anyway, yeah, Spawn. I was like, oh, you're just so cool. And he had like Spawn rings and like Spawn necklace or something. I don't know. Like he was everything you want Tom McFarlane to be when you meet him.
Did you mention you were Canadian? Or like, hey, I'm Canadian. I write comics.
I don't even know if I did. Like it was kind of that weird thing where like I was only known for Sex Criminals, so it's always hard to introduce yourself. Like, yeah, I'm the artist on a book called Sex Criminals. He's like, oh yeah, I know it.
Oh,
I don't know if he did. I had a similar thing with Chris Claremont. Like I met him at Mexico City at a convention.
Let me hear your story. How you met him?
Well, like I had just got the job doing Star-Lord.
Mhm.
And so I kind of ran into him, and I'm like, oh hey, my name's Chip, and I'm doing Marvel stuff. And I told him I was doing Star-Lord. I used to read his Star-Lord stories in the magazine format from my weird Uncle Fred. And there's a whole subplot in those about Star-Lord's ship being in love with him.
Yeah.
And I mentioned that to Claremont. I think he said something weird and kind of sexy about that. I'm just like, oh, that's weird. I forget exactly what he said, but I remember being like, oh, okay, that's where your head was at during that. But then he looked out, like at the Mexico City convention, they print these giant banners for you. They're like 50 feet tall of like your most known work. And so mine was the cover to Sex Criminals issue 1, which is just like the main character Susie with like a gun and like a whip.
Oh, yeah.
And like I remember Chris Claremont looking at it and going, is that yours? I'm like, yeah, it's a book called Sex Criminals. He's like, he just looked at her and for a bit too long, he's like, I like that. I was like, all right, man. Nice.
You gave Chris Claremont slap bait, dude.
Well, I mean, like Chris Claremont was the guy. Chris Claremont was the guy who put Storm in like her punk, spike collar phase. Like he was a real leather S&M guy back in the 80s, I think.
Savage Land Storm is best Storm. Just saying. John Earth, Savage Land Storm. My goodness.
Well, Colin's pointing out that Omar interviewed Tom McFarlane. He wouldn't fall for the omnibus.
I'm gonna do it.
Either,
He's like, I don't know, maybe one day.
Must be a Canadian thing.
Has he not done Spawn in omnibus?
No, they've done like hardcovers that are out of print. They've done big, tall, like absolute style books, trade paperbacks. He's done a compendium, which is the soft cover. It must be a Canadian thing and nut crunching books. Like you guys aren't into that, huh?
Well, like like we like our nuts big and fluffy, not crushed. But like with Sex Criminals, like we do these hardcovers, which are oversized, and the dust jacket, and like I find they look really elegant, especially when the third one comes out. Like they're going to look really nice together. I don't think you need a different version of that where they're all jammed together.
Yeah, we need it, okay?
I don't know. This is the discussion I have with Matt, because it's like I know we're turning down money. I know we're just like saying I don't want to make money, but also I'm just like I don't want to produce more stuff in the world that is ultimately landfill, especially if people aren't going to read it. Man, it's a very hard thing for me.
I have never thought about it like that. Like
not landfill.
Yeah, it would go to like the recycling.
No, collectors. They wouldn't get rid of it.
Where do these things end up? Where do we all end up? Come on.
Sell it to somebody else. They don't throw them away. They sell it to somebody
You think in 300 years' time, these things are just going to be like sitting on people's shelves or being sold around? At some point, they end up garbage.
It's the same as the trades, though.
I know, and that's the thing. Like, I struggle with that.
How did we get to this conversation?
It's philosophical Daredevil. Deep.
I see the single issues as disposable. They're like magazines or newspapers to me. Like I buy a single issue, I read it, I throw it out. I know it's sacrilege. Or I give it to like somebody I know that likes them.
No, that's good. See, you pass it on.
Yeah. I don't pass on my magazines or my newspapers, and that's how I kind of view the single issues. The trades are just like, okay, that's for the story. Now I'm reading that for the story. The hardcover's like, it's story, but it's a little fancy. Omnibus is just too fancy. Too fancy. I know I'm on your omnibus show, and I'm just like,
I really need to rebrand my channel into Too Fancy Books.
Yes.
I know you're sitting there in a DuckTales shirt in your Batman chair, and I'm saying you're too fancy. But look,
are you calling me out?
Dude, you're too fancy. You're too fancy.
Oh, I should have worn a suit. Damn
Not
it.
too fancy, but I can't find anything not too fancy. Dude, like $5. There
Look,
you go.
maybe one day Image or Matt will convince me that we should do a Sex Criminals omnibus. I kind of want to do the opposite. I want to put it out in like newsprint, a little bit smaller.
Like manga, you're going into the manga.
It could be the manga thing now. Yeah, it could be.
Oh, that's funny.
I'm sorry. I would never lie to you. At least you know that.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. I appreciate all the honesty here. It's been really nice getting to know you, man. Like the brain behind all this and the madness and you know, and how much you see, you know, the work that you're putting in. It's eventually going to end in a damn landfill, apparently. Like all the collectors watching right now going, wait a minute, I'm buying this guy's Howard the Duck omnibus. Where's it going to end up in 100 years?
The older I get, the harder it is for me to go and walk around a comic convention and just see all the products and all the merchandise. And it's just like, oh my God, it's just too much.
Mm-hmm.
People like tearing each other's hair out to get to the latest Funko Pop. I'm like, no, don't, please. Like there's one year at San Diego where I was situated at the front, like we're right next to Hall H where they do all the movie stuff. And I was at the front, I guess it's Hall G. And I was setting up and getting ready for them to open the doors. And they opened the doors. It was a stampede of people. And I swear to God, there was like one woman holding her baby over her head so the baby didn't get hurt. And I stood on my chair to watch this. And they were just stampeding right past me, right to the back, to the Funko Pop setup to get the rare Funko Pop for that day. And I was just like, oh my God, like we're making too much stuff in this world. There's too much stuff.
That is so deep, man. I love it. Like it's so hard as a collector. But I see your point.
Green Laser says you don't have to hunt down 40 books to get the art and story in one place.
40 books. Come on.
Paul says, "Oh man, Zdarsky, he's the best."
Man, Zdarsky.
Back in my day, you read comics on rock. Those are nut crushers. Those were nut crushers, I tell you. Hieroglyphs.
Forget your life story, Andy. Yes, that's the next thing you do is old man versions of these things or old lady versions of all these characters that have just had enough. Like the Punisher, old man Punisher. I know it's been done with Punisher at the end, but you can do an old man Punisher. It's like we're making too many things in this world. It's time to take out some people, like collectors, right? He's going down and hunting collectors because we're buying too many Omnis that are going to eventually end up in a landfill.
It's true. I feel old man Punisher would be more like, maybe I killed too many people. Just sitting there in his rocking chair. What have I done?
Redemption for you, man.
Yeah.
Oh,
the final Punisher story. Whoops.
Wait. Do you read on a tablet? Do you read on, since you don't like wasting paper and things like that?
Yeah. I'm almost exclusively on tablet.
Paul's hurling it.
Do you have
it at your head?
How do people approach you at a convention going, can you sign my tablet? Like, how do you
I've signed a few tablets.
Cool.
What we get a lot, especially on Sex Criminals, would be a lot of people come up and they'd have the first trade and they'd be like, oh, I've been reading it digitally, but I liked it so much I wanted to own the first trade so I can get it signed by you. I'm like, oh, that's nice. I get that. It's almost exclusively digital. For the manga podcast, once in a while there'll be one that isn't available digitally and I'll have to get a hard copy of that. But yeah, unless it's like an art book, unless it's something that like I love, like the artist edition, like the IDW size. Like obviously you don't get those digital, you get those because you're seeing them actual size and studying
if you're
them.
Getting artist books digitally, then maybe you need to rethink life. Actually,
I mean, unless it's digital art, like
you're telling this dude that's writing like all these fantastic stories, you need to rethink your life.
No, I'm rethinking my life now. Like I think I need to redo the channel, rebrand it. Like there's way too many books. Like here, they're all gonna end up somewhere.
I started.
Look, some of them are. Sorry, Melanie.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I started reading comics digitally like a couple weeks ago, just because I'm addicted to my phone and I want to, like, I don't know, do something more constructive. They go to the same app for the 5th time that day.
Yeah.
And so actually that's how I read volumes 4 and 5 of Daredevil.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate
Which I had.
Yeah, and I didn't know. I'm sorry, baby.
Like, she loves your work that much. She got excited.
That's what. Yes, wow. Because I was eating breakfast Sunday morning, and I'm like, I gotta know what happens next. And so I just clicked, buy instantly.
All she had to do was walk down here.
I didn't know. All right. Anyway,
they're in alphabetical order.
However, I read Elsa. Somebody tell me how to say her last name. Charretier.
Charretier. I don't know. Yeah.
Infinite Loop, and I kept, zooming out on that thing because I wanted to see how all the panels flowed, and yeah, that definitely I wish I had read in physical.
There are some books that the physical product really helps it. Like one of the manga we just read was a book called A Journal of My Father, and just like the book binding's beautiful. The pages are like there's a thickness and a yellow quality to the pages, and like the ink's like quite lovely on it. And they hadn't released it digitally, and I can see why they didn't, because like no, that's not how you're supposed to experience this. You experience this like this. Right, it's a book to read, and it's an art object. And I love stuff like that. Like I love books that are a lot of thought and care has been put into the production of them.
Yeah, and definitely Daredevil too. I was just so wrapped up in the story, like I had to read it like right then. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
With Elsa's Infinite Loop, Patrick wrote it. You're supposed to see like everything flowing together, right?
Yeah.
Like because hence the name Infinite Loop. It's all connected.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm giving it a try because, like I said, I want to read while I'm sitting there for 5 minutes doing nothing. So
yeah, the other thing for me is it makes it easier for me than for most people is that I get all the Marvel books basically sent to me, like PDFs of it. So that's kind of like my homework at night. Like I'll go through what kind of was sent to the printer that week, and I'll read the ones that either I need to read for work or I want to read for pleasure.
Oh, yeah.
Chip, you are a super busy guy, and I want to thank you so much
for
joining us.
I can't believe it's been 2 hours.
I want to thank everybody for joining and chiming in. And if you have if you're watching this later, thank you all, and don't forget to hit that like button and check out Chip's work and his newsletter and his Manga Explaining podcast that he does from time to time. I'm not kicking.
So it's mangaexplaining.com.
Yeah, I'm not kicking you off the show at all. I'm just looking at some of the questions here, and we're getting so many great questions. So I'll pick a couple more to kind of pick your brain. Sure. Do you take inspiration from foreign stories, art into your stories? If so, what are some of your favorite across the world?
I mean, the manga stuff has been eye-opening. There's a lot I've been picking up, like storytelling tricks that you don't see a lot in North American comics, like in terms of like panel composition. Pacing of stories, especially like manga tends to, especially the serious ones, tend to go a lot slower. You can have like 5 pages of a character walking, and it's really quite beautiful. And also just like, I don't know, it's kind of the humorous ones and the ones that are just kind of just about like real people really make me realize how little of that we have here. Like everything has to kind of be a genre. Like through Image, especially for the most part, it's just like, oh, this is sci-fi, this is fantasy, this is like vampires, this is superheroes.
That's what you mean. Like you don't like genres, you like it all just organically, naturally connected.
Yeah, it's not that I don't like genre. I don't think I need it. Like as that extra layer on top of the story. Like I really like the character-driven stuff. Most of the books I read are grounded in real world cities with real world things happening. And I really like seeing that in the Japanese comics that I've been reading. And it's really influencing what I do next for Image. I really want to do stuff that's kind of fun about relationships and about people and about families that, doesn't necessarily have to be horror or sci-fi or whatever.
Right, yeah. I think that sounds great.
It's about a guy that used to be in the mafia and now he's at home. as the house husband.
Exactly.
Yes.
Right? You didn't throw that idea out there.
Except it's called the path of the house husband.
Well, you can't call him a house husband, then that's a lawsuit.
But it's path, not way.
It's the way. It's the way of the house husband.
So now you call it path. There.
Okay, the American
There
version.
you go.
There you
There you go. Perfect.
go.
Chip, have you read Ets or not? It's a
No,
wonderful,
I haven't.
Argentina comic book. It's great.
We should check it out.
And does your ability as an artist? This is a great question. That awesome. Is that Darwin Cook? I think Parker.
Yeah.
Chip, does your ability as an artist inform how you write for other artists? Like, does it depend who you're working with?
Yeah. Like, I think most artists like working with me because the things that I write, they're able to draw. Like, I think some writers don't actually think it through visually, so they'll be asking for things that actually can't happen on the page, or
okay.
Like I'm pretty good at being able to visualize the space of a page and the pacing of a page, so I can help them make it work. The downside is also, like, I'll have the visual in my head, and then when the page comes back and it's not what was in my head, it upsets me.
Oh.
But a lot of times it upsets me because it's better than what was in my head, which makes me a shitty artist. So, there's that.
About you.
I will say, like, I probably feel a lot more guilt than other writers, because when I do write a scene that I know is going to be hard to draw,
You mentioned
I feel bad.
Yeah.
I feel bad for sure.
Andrew, that was your question that he was answering. I'm not sure if you heard it.
No, you got to put it more than once so that it
Put it like
Andrew, stop asking this. Andrew, stop it. Andrew, I've answered this goddamn question.
There is a lag, all right?
Please.
I'm in a different order in StreamYard than you two.
Just seeing that people seem to agree with me that Marvel should have given Chip Zdarsky the fat after Marvel 2-in-1, but Chip selling himself short, saying, "Why would you give this guy named Chip Zdarsky that?"
Yeah, I don't think it would have made any commercial sense. I think Dan was a much bigger draw, and coming off of 10 years of Amazing, I think that was a perfect place for him to land, because he loves those characters. I think in Dan's head, Spider-Man and FF are like the biggest Marvel characters, and I've also really enjoyed Dan's run. So, like, for myself as a reader, I'm loving it because I get to read his books, right?
If you, oh gosh, I know we got to wrap this up, but I do have to ask as a fan, since you wrote FF X-Men, did you know about the Franklin thing? And I'm trying to be as vague as possible because people are.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how vague we have to be. I did not know. That wasn't. I don't even think they landed on that idea. Because I was dealing with both offices. Like, the whole storyline was about whether or not Franklin goes to Krakoa or stays with the FF, and I was like, well, he could just do both. Like, that's what these Krakoan gateways are all about. Like, I wouldn't deny either title.
True.
Use of the character. So, spoiler, he ends up being kind of a member of both kind of families.
Yeah.
At the time, there was no indication from the Fantastic Four office that status quo was going to change at all. I don't think the X-Men office had any clue either. And sometimes that just happens. Sometimes, like, Dan worked on the story and then realized he wanted to take the story somewhere else, and he went and did that. And the X-Men side found out about that, and they changed their plans as a result. So that's just what happens.
We have a lot of really good questions here.
I know. I was just thinking this might be a good place to. Sorry, Cycle Cleveland's making me laugh. A good, last question. Do you geek out on comics history at all? E.g., figuring out who is
Chakins.
who in Chakins' Hey Kids comics?
I haven't read it yet. It's on my list.
Or maybe just a question about you as a comic book fan.
As the history of it, I love the history of it. Like, Sean Howe's book about Marvel a few years ago is an amazing read, just about the creation of Marvel and Marvel through the decades. Like, it's a very in-depth book. I highly recommend it.
I think Andrew's asking again. I don't think he heard you. The history of the Marvel Universe that Mark Waid did last year.
Oh yeah.
Thing is freaking beast, man. Like
Yeah.
That was crazy. I'm a big fan of that. All right, now I do have to end it with this.
This is a good one too. This is a good one.
This is for an aspiring comic book writer. What's the best advice you would give?
Writers hate this advice, and it's learn to draw. I mean, it'll make you a better writer, but also you'll be able to make books, right? Like the hardest part of being a writer, from what I understand, is finding an artist to make books with you, because drawing comics is really hard and is labor intensive, and like you might get a few pages out of somebody when they're excited about the book, and then that's it. Like they just don't show up.
Yeah. Because
drawing just takes so long. My favorite story is about Ray Fox. Ray Fox, he's done a couple of amazing books for Oni. He did like Hellblazer and Justice League Dark for DC, a few Marvel books. And back in the early 2000s, when I was in a studio in Toronto, he would kind of come by. He was a writer, but he couldn't find anyone to draw his books. So at the age of 30, he started to teach himself to draw. And so he'd come by the studio and he would show us some of his artwork. I was like, that's okay. He was clearly getting better. But he got it to a stage where he was able to write and draw a comic. And he took that comic and he handed it out to editors. And he got it into the hands of a Vertigo editor. And they were like, this is great. This is a great story. Your art isn't there yet. So we want to redo it here with a different artist.
Yeah.
And so that was his book, Nemavor. And it came out with a great artist. And it started Ray's career at DC in Vertigo. And then he just did all these books for them, and like his Oni books, which were like award winning. And he became a better artist as well along the way. That's the ideal. Like if you want, as a writer, to get your books in front of editors at Marvel, DC, wherever, you need to give them a final product. You can't just like send them scripts. Like they're never going to read it. Mm-hmm. But as a comic, you have a shot. You have a shot of them actually checking it out. Which means you have to get an artist, you have to learn to draw. And my money is always on learn to draw, because then the only person that'll let you down is yourself.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that what a smart idea, right? So there isn't a disconnect between writer and artist that, like you mentioned earlier, because you are an artist, you understand what you are asking of the person. And you can plan for 20 pages. How many pages is it?
Depends on the company.
It is.
Andrew wasn't live. It's okay, Andrew. It's cool.
Anyway, wow.
And the big thing is, like, we talk about Daredevil writers that you love, Brubaker and Bendis. They're both artists. Brubaker started off writing and drawing his own books. Bendis did the same thing.
Yep.
Like this is part of it. Even Fraction knows how to draw. So yeah, a lot of times when you do find, a writer you like, chances are high that they also know how to draw, at least on some level.
I think of I always think of like Hickman and people like that.
Oh, yeah.
They all have, it surprises me, I guess, later on when I find out, they also drew some of this stuff earlier.
Yeah. Well, it's how they break in, because Bendis got, the stuff that he wrote and drew in front of the editors at Marvel, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, man, again, big thank you for
David Mack,
being a part of this interview. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was a lot of fun.
Learn stuff, right?
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be an intervention for you about your omnibus problem, but
I think that's exactly what you term my omnibus problem.
If we turn this camera around,
let's not do that. We don't need to do that. Like, Chip has like a bare wall behind him. This man lives bare minimum. He doesn't.
I kind of do.
Like, I don't care about like physical things. Everything is superficial. We're all gonna die and not become. We're not gonna become ghosts either, according to Chip Zdarsky. So
you gotta tell my mom. The ghost stole my jeans for 3 weeks one time. Just saying.
There you go.
That was the most countryest thing you've said like all night. Everybody, thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank
Chip,
you so much.
Go check out Chip's work. It's gonna a lot of his work is being collected in oversized hardcover format, omnibus format coming out, trade paperback, and then every month.
And then what ifs? yes, I'm sorry. Daredevil with Spider-Man, Spider-Shadow, 2 more issues, and 13 projects, and more stuff. We're not into
More
making.
stuff.
Yeah. So thank you again, Chip. And you doing any cons this year?
Never again.
Never. You're done with cons?
I think so.
There you go.
Dude, you are old man Chip Zdarsky, dude.
Yeah, I know. I'm just going to be alone in my house for decades with no books, nothing.
Yeah, you need
That's
you
my
need
new
to
life.
Get some sleep.
You need
That's
some
what Brett
sleep.
said.
There
Get
we
some
go.
sleep.